So when we're reflecting on folklore or folk stories or tales, I think something that is highlighted or that comes to mind is that our African stories were not just told for fun. Sometimes they had a story behind them. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you have a point though, because I remember I was talking to someone the other day and they were mentioning the story of how elephants came to be. And apparently, it's about a story of a woman who was lonely and she lived in a village and the entire village
I
shunned her.
remember that.
And there was one time where a massive wind just came and blew throughout where she stayed, and she was busy, pounding some grains using a mortar and a pestle.
Yeah.
And apparently, the mortar became the trunk, and the pestle became the feet, and she
Yeah.
transformed from being an entire woman to being an elephant. And
Yeah.
it's funny because you wouldn't think that the evolution and creation of an elephant would come
Yeah.
from a story
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
lonely woman who
Yeah.
was shunned by a village.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah.
yeah, it reminds me of I think that is the Ambukushu.
Mm.
They have a similar story of creation.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember the details,
Mm.
but they talk about how God created man, and then they made a long rope, and man climbed down the rope to earth
From
to
where?
from heaven. So our stories are very interesting.
That's
I particularly love the story of Sananapu.
yeah.
And I think what I think is a pity for us is that our kids don't get to hear those stories.
That's true.
We had the benefit of sitting around the fire
Yeah.
with back then we had a helper who was from, I think she was from the Bobonong areas or yes, those general areas, and we used to have a fire religiously every day
That's
back in
incredible.
Serowe.
Yeah.
And we sat around the fire and we would tell stories.
Yeah.
Some we made up,
Yeah.
but yeah, she would tell us these amazing stories, and it would be nice if we could show today's kids our stories,
Yeah.
you know?
I think also one thing that is like consistent throughout the stories of our African culture, especially in Botswana, is that many of the stories were passed down from generation to generation via word of mouth. But I think it's very important for us to track back on those stories and bring them back to life. It means making them existent in written literature, making shows about them, movies about them, just to kind of remind ourselves of just how even our land has very rich, interesting stories that
Mm-hmm.
can be
Mm-hmm.
relatable to every single
Yeah.
person of
Yeah.
every single walk of life, of
Mm.
every generation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's what we need
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do.
almost definitely. And I think that's why the Malobajale project is very important for us, for our generations and generations to come, because they'll get to know Princess Sananapo.
Yeah.
They'll get to know Chiwele. They'll get to know all of these princesses and princes and heroes from the past,
Yeah.
or from our stories.